Morning.
I could be like Supervisor McDonald and hit the gavel, but he's not here to make fun of that, so I can't do it. But that being said, good morning. At this point, could I please have a motion to approve the minutes from our prior personnel meeting made by Supervisor Frazier, seconded by Supervisor Montesi? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. At this point, I'd like to open a privilege to the floor. Is there anything from any members of the public that would like to be heard regarding our personnel meeting this morning? I'm certainly happy to open up that privilege again at the end of the meeting if anyone should desire. Our first action item on our agenda is under the SUNY Adirondack and higher education information. At this point in time, we do not have a report from the college, but there are two quick items I would like to draw your attention to. And I think it's at the end of your agenda. On your flip side, please note that on June 2nd at 9:30, we have our joint Warren-Washington County meeting over at the college. So please make sure that's on your calendar. We will all need to be in attendance for that to discuss their updates in their budget.
You know the location?
It's usually in the Regional Higher Education Hall in the rec room. So the newer building, if you follow the signs for SUNY Plattsburgh and SUNY Empire, it's in that building.
One in the lower.
But we'll email that out. Sure. And then secondly, just again to remind the committee and to congratulate Andrew Polino. He has been chosen to receive our Warren County Student Recognition Award at Commencement, which is the day before our board meeting, May 18th at 6 p.m. We will be providing him with a certificate of recognition at our June evening meeting. Andrew was very excited to have been nominated. You all have a copy in front of you of his nomination from his professor, and was very pleased to hear that we have an evening meeting. He is looking forward to bringing his friends and his family to see him get the award. And as a side note, for those of you on social media, he posted an incredibly sweet post that I believe hundreds of people liked and many shared. So he was very excited to receive this award and looks forward to being able to meet all of you at our June evening meeting. That being said, moving on to number 2, items that need to be discussed by the Human Resource Director and our Personnel Officer. Our first item, number A, is from Matt Schuett. We're going to invite Yeager and Flynn to come up and talk a little bit about, we're having quarterly updates with them. But before I do that, is Mike Swan here? Oh, there he is. Our treasurer. What I'd like our treasurer to just do briefly is give a quick update to the Personnel Committee on why these quarterly meetings are so important. What I have really enjoyed doing is having a regular meeting with our new broker for our health insurance, because we hope to be making some changes in this area, and there is no one better at this moment than Treasurer Swan to give the history and also why it's so important that at least we make one of these changes this year. But would like to start drawing your attention to it. This will be an item that our committee will be involved in discussing. Treasurer Swan?
Good morning. Thank you, Rachel. Would have appreciated a couple more minutes notice.
Oh, you're that good, Mike.
But basically, when Yeager and Flynn took over, we sat down and said, look, the county needs to start looking forward as to what we're going to be doing with health care and how we're going to do it as economically as possible. And Yeager and Flynn was more than willing to sit down with us on a regular basis, and we decided quarterly was the best way to start reviewing all of these processes. And the goal was to come up with a plan to present to the committee and to the board as to a way that we could proceed in the future to try to save the county money, maintain the current level of health care that we have for the employees, and to make it obviously more affordable for everybody, not just the county but for the employees. And we've been doing that, and I think it's working very well. We've exchanged a lot of good ideas. And I don't want to steal their thunder or anything, but and I'll let them talk about it. But we do need to address the prescription plan that we have. There's a couple of minor problems with that. Well, I shouldn't say minor problems, but we need to insure ourselves on that. And I'll let them explain it. They're a little better at that than I am, but that's where we're at. And I think I'm very pleased with the way that the meetings are working out, because we are actually exchanging some good ideas. We're getting some good communication going, and I think if by us getting everything in place before we come to the committee, we will have the answers for you to the questions that you may have regarding any of this, because we'll be prepared to do that. Thank you. Questions?
That was an excellent overview. I can tell you prepared for that for the last month. I told you, he knew what he was talking about. So with that, Matt, if we can give your agency the floor for about, we did have 20 minutes on the agenda. None of us, our feelings definitely don't get hurt if you are able to be, you know, we wrap it up in 15 minutes, maybe 12 minutes. But no, he's got some really good information. I think you'll find it useful.
Won't offend anybody if I'm a little short, is what you're saying, right? All right. Thanks, Rachel. So, yes, and thanks, Treasurer Swan, for kind of teeing it up for me a little bit. So what you have in front of you is just a simple 2-page document, and I'm going to spend a little time going over where the county currently sits with their insurance program, and then what we're thinking about what it would look like if we entertain moving to a self-insured model. Okay, and really the purpose of this and going over this is to start to educate, get comfortable with it, knowing what the pros and cons are of self-insuring. And to Treasurer Swan's point, you know, we do have to address the prescriptions, and I'll from a risk standpoint purely, nothing affecting employees. The employee coverage is, and I just want to make that message loud and clear. There's the employee prescription plan stays as it is. It's in place, a very strong plan. No effect to that. It's just from a risk perspective on the county side that we need to discuss. So if you grab that stapled piece of paper I handed out, on the left-hand side is the current situation that the county has. And I know, you know, as we're going through this, you have a complex setup of your health plan. But I'm going to try to break it down into the various components and then again address the risk side of it. And comparing it, left-hand side is where you're currently in. It's components of a minimum premium contract. That's your current contract. On the right-hand side is components of a self-funded contract. That's a possibility in the future. That's where we may go. So again, purpose of this is to educate and determine if you want us to continue down the road of investigating this. So I'll go through it, and I would just suggest please ask questions with this. I'll try to keep the pace for the sake of the agenda, but you know, ask anything that pops in your head with this question-wise, and I'm happy to meet with anybody else after too. But it's starting from the top, minimum premium. So you pay is part of your rates. It's wrapped into the total rate package. You pay a administrative cost to the carrier. In this case, it's Blue Shield, for administering your program, for paying claims, for producing ID cards, for managing your actual program. That portion, as an example, costs $74.95. That's the equivalent rate. That's the portion that's wrapped into your entire rates. That's $75 roughly of it is administration. As you peel to the right, you see going to self-insured, completely self-insuring, that you also have an administrative component. Rates aren't finalized yet, but it gives you a sense that that's equal from that standpoint. The second row down, employer liability. Right now, the county is paying claims under the Blue Shield program. So if an employee goes to the doctor, has lab work, surgery, hospitalization, etc., Blue Shield administers that, and the county actually ends up paying for that claim themselves. Now, where there's a cap on it, though. So if you have very high claims, you have extreme examples of high-cost claims, there's a ceiling on it. That's the main benefit. You can benefit from good claim years where you don't have a lot of claims, and you have a ceiling under your current fully insured program where you would only pay the maximum claim amount that Blue Shield sets for you in this case. Where if we go to a self-insured contract, you also have, you can also have maximum claim liabilities, but they are higher. Okay, there's different risk levels that we have to discuss, and I'll go into that in more detail. The one area that Treasurer Swan brought up, and we promised we'd address, is if you go to the third box, self-funded prescription. Your prescription plan right now, you may not realize it, but it is self-insured right now. So you have a fully insured medical plan through Blue Shield and a self-insured prescription plan through Blue Shield. Express Scripts is the prescription vendor in the background. The risk that's sitting there today, and that we addressed earlier and Treasurer Swan brought up, is that there's no reinsurance on that prescription portion presently. Okay? There's no reinsurance. So why is this an issue? You may have been reading and learning more about it and seeing the cost of prescriptions. It's alarming, some of the specialty prescription drugs that are out there. Some of the injectable prescriptions, we're talking the ones that are $4,000 and $5,000 and $10,000 a month don't even really get our attention as much anymore. We, and believe it or not, we've run into some recently that would be covered under an insurance plan, and the cost for one injectable for a, it's called Duchenne's muscular dystrophy, which is a weight-based injection. The cost was $580,000. Okay, so the concern that we have now, to be clear, the county doesn't have that prescription right now. There's no employee that has it. There's nothing sitting there that we know of right now. But my point is, and our point is in discussing this, is there's no reinsurance or stop loss or pooling, whatever we want to call it, on top of your prescription plan. The county's on the hook for 100% of costs beyond what the employee pays for copay. Okay, so that's a concern. We are going to look at options to address it and give you reinsurance programs that are just standalones, just for prescription. One point to make is if you look on the self-funded column, under self-funded prescriptions, it would still be self-funded, but we would bring the prescriptions and medical together. We would combine them, and they would all be reinsured. You would all have, and reinsurance, again, is just protection above and beyond a certain dollar amount. Okay? So when we talk about risk, that's the one area that we're addressing right now. We'd say we either have to address it in moving to self-insuring, or we're going to look at, if you keep your current arrangement of a fully insured Blue Shield plan and self-insured prescriptions, we are going to look at options to provide reinsurance just on the prescription plan themselves. I know that's a heavy amount of info. I just chucked at you there. So we're coming at it from a risk perspective, though. Questions on that, or any comments that Treasurer Swan, you'd like to put in?
How does the reinsurance work?
The reinsurance, you just think of it as a backing. Once you hit a certain point between medical claims and prescription claims, let's say in this case if you're self-funded, once you hit it, it could be $100,000, it could be $200,000 or $250,000. Once you cross that line, the reinsurer covers everything thereafter. Okay, so it's protection, and we don't need it for regular doctor visit claims. You don't need it generally for small generic prescriptions. You need it for high-cost claimants, hospitalizations coupled with large prescription costs. Claims that are going to get into the $500,000, $1 million range. There's all kinds of sorts and types that cross over.
I'm nervous about this, to be honest with you. This is imperative that we do something about this. And I've asked Gabe and Flynn to come up with some cost ideas as to which way to go. But as far as I'm concerned, we either get some stop loss on what we're doing right now, or we go back to Blue Shield or something, because we can't, 5 or 6, 8 years ago when this was started, you didn't have these type of prescription deals, so it wasn't considered a necessity to need this. But now, we're gambling, okay? And right now we need to make sure that we don't get hammered down the road on this.
Well, and just, I think what that is Supervisor Montesi's phone is ringing for a cry of help from Mike Swan, and asking that at this point we take an opportunity, and I'm just going to cut you off for one moment right there. As a committee, what our treasurer has asked us to look at, as has our county administrator, is this something that we have the support of the committee to pursue researching and move forward addressing the prescriptions? I know I learned yesterday that pretty soon 50% of our prescriptions will be specialty prescriptions, which are these higher cost subscriptions. So, Supervisor Montesi.
Nancy, would you be able to, if we want to pursue this, would you be able to give us an idea of how much we're spending right now on, you said $10,000 doesn't excite you anymore in terms of
Doesn't scare me, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely excites me, but.
You know what I mean? Can you give us a readout of what we're spending now?
Yeah, certainly. Your prescription plan right now, we don't have, to the risk side of it, there hasn't been any individual in the last 12 months that we've been looking at that is crossing themselves that has one of those particular high-cost prescriptions. But if you, I would just say if you're watching the Masters of the U.S. Open or any sporting event and you see those prescription commercials, guaranteed in the background those are 5, 10, 20 grand. So those it could hit at any point in time. It doesn't mean it's going to cross over that $250,000 or that $200,000 level, but absolutely we're going to be able to break it down to give you a sense for where the risk lies.
Okay, we have a few hands up, so I'm trying to do this fairly, so I don't want to offend anyone. Supervisor Sokol, you were first, then Bramer, then Brock.
I completely agree with Michael. It is a gamble. However, this did come up probably 5 years ago. I remember discussing it, probably Administrator Gary remembers the conversation well, but it was the direction that we were going into. Since 2008, our picture looks better and better. Quite honestly, right now we are probably as healthy as we have ever been. So if we were to take a gamble, it would be now. Amy Clute has been doing a tremendous job with her safety program. Matt, question though, if we go forward with this, is it a one-year contract? Is it a 3-year contract? Do we have to get? Can we try it for 1 year and take the risk and see if it's worth it or not?
Yeah, it's a good question. Yeah, they're 12-month contracts.
Okay.
You're not locked in, for any particular length of time, really. Having said that, if you think about the insurance market, if you were to go self-insured, and let's say, as we've talked about in the past, out of a 10-year period, you're going to have a couple years, absolutely, where you're going to have some bad claim years. It's just a law of averages. So if you happen to get hit with those large claim years and the early end of it, and you want to go back to fully insured, there's nothing stopping you from doing it. It's just chances are almost certainly going to cost you more to do so. Because the insurance carrier, keeping in mind, if you have bad claim years, medical or prescription, there's nowhere to hide, in other words. If you have bad claim years, the insurance carrier does what to your rates? It raises them. Right. So when you're on the self-insured side, if you have bad claim years, rates tend to go up, but we can manage it. And if you do look at self-insured plans, there are ways that you can help to avoid claims. You can get very creative with your plan designs. Wellness programs do matter, certainly over time with that. So it starts to turn into a different discussion of managing risk versus just managing rates.
Supervisor Bramer.
Thanks. Is the question, the sense of urgency that I got was about reinsurance on the prescription.
That's correct.
That seems like we should definitely move forward with that. Does that have to go with the self-insurance on the medical, or what? Aren't those
Not necessarily.
Right. Supervisor, or Chairman Conover, I think, would like to address that
Yeah.
answer.
The thing to remember, what Mike's message is that on the healthcare side, we have a fund balance, right? Call it $4 million, whatever it is. We have a reservation that backs up that program. On the prescription side, we don't have that. It goes right to the general fund and the fund balance. Do not pass forward, do not collect $200. So what I think you would want to see from the industry is the cost of the reinsurance. And that would seem to me to be related to where it kicks in. In other words, that if it kicks in at $15,000 as fund price, if it kicks in at $150,000, it's like a deductible, it's like your car. The higher the deductibles. So it becomes a balancing act based upon our assessment of risk. And so I think the recommendation is that we explore and have, what I would recommend at this stage, that we explore the idea of reinsurance, and then we can, when we have the specific products in front of us at whatever thresholds, we can evaluate it at that time, because then it becomes a cost risk thing, right? Then it becomes, how much is this costing us per year, and, you know, do we want to pay that for the certificate of doing this? Right?
So Supervisor Bramer, I guess, and we'll get to discussion here in just one point, but I think in speaking with our county administrator, what would be appropriate as a resolution to move forward with the stop loss on the prescription that then would move on to finance once we have the information on the cost for finance to make that decision. So
Sure, I'll make that.
Supervisor Bramer will be making that motion. It's seconded by Supervisor Montesi. At this point, I know we're moving on to discussion, and Supervisor Brock did have a question regarding prescription.
Well, the reinsurance. How? I mean, it's a statistical game. Like you mentioned, $500,000. What are the chances of that actually happening? Not necessarily to us, but with what's a general. Is it a rare thing? Is it a...
It's becoming much less rare. It's because the specialty market continues to grow. You probably see it on the flip side. You know, there was equal revenue from the pharmacies coming from your drugs like your Lipitors and even all these generic drugs. And those now, you've probably seen this yourself. Some of those cost 90 cents. And $1 and $3, some of those generic drugs. That's not where the revenue is coming anymore. It's a lot of it's on the specialty side, and it's not. I gave you kind of the unusual one, but there was a few that came through a few years ago. You may see the commercial for it now. Harvoni, Sovaldi was one. It was a hepatitis C prescription, and they were to some degree a miracle drug where they did actually cure it. But it was 3 or 4 injections at $20,000 to $25,000 a pop. You know, so there's a lot, and there's a lot of those that are out there that just didn't exist before.
But my basic question then is, how much would the premium be for? I mean, this is sort of an unknown game, isn't it? Where if I'm an insurer, I don't know exactly where this is growing, and how am I going to price it? And if Warren County suddenly has 1 or 2 of these big expensive ones, are they going to get their money back from us?
It's a good question and scenario. When we are marketing this, we are going to be, and we don't have numbers yet. We had to go through this process first, naturally. So I don't have any estimates could share that would be accurate. But the process will be is that we do have claim utilization of what the county's prescription spend has been and where it's coming from, and that'll all be shared when the stop-loss carrier is marketing. They're going to have a sense for what they're insuring, of what risk they're taking on, certainly, and it's and we'll have to make the decision of you would only need reinsurance on your prescriptions if you stay in the arrangement that you're in. If we go self-insuring, if we go completely self-insured, then it's automatic. It comes with it. We don't need to get a separate one. You would have one reinsuring policy sitting over medical and prescription claims. So we're only talking about this standalone in your current situation.
And to that point, Supervisor Brock, that is why that resolution is on the table, is to address the more immediate need at this point regarding prescriptions, but also, after we vote on this, is to get the sense of the committee. You know, we all sit on many different committees and subcommittees, so we are dedicated to working on this if that's the desire of this committee. If it is not the desire to continue to work on a possibility of a self-insured plan, a complete medical and script plan, then we will not continue working on that.
This is just for prescriptions.
But the resolution that is on the table right now is as it relates to prescription. Are there any other discussions as it relates to prescription? Supervisor Leggett.
So as it stands now, the county, anybody on the county plans do not have prescription under the Blue Cross Blue Shield. It's funded by the county. Is that correct?
Well, the employees have prescription coverage,
Right.
and it's administered by Blue Shield. So the employees would not feel any difference whatsoever. It's a matter of how far the county, because the county pays for the claims of the prescription plan. We're just...
That's the 143.6.
Yeah. Yep, exactly. That's a premium equivalent, an estimate of what you would have, what needs to be charged to cover the prescription claims.
And
You're
we're
gonna
doing...
basically get a bill from Blue Cross, or I'm sorry, Blue Shield, for the prescriptions that are sent out, and we pay.
We pay them retail or sorry, I'm so confused about this.
Well, okay, I go to the doctor and I get a prescription for something, whatever.
Yeah.
And it costs... Thanks for waking up, Dennis.
At least you know what I was dreaming about.
Moving on, Supervisor Swan, or Treasurer Swan.
All right, so I go to the doctor, I get a prescription, I go to the pharmacist, I got my Blue Shield card, it goes through them, Blue Shield pays the pharmacy, and then Blue Shield bills the county for that prescription. And then we write a check to Blue Shield.
That's the way it works now. Correct.
So Supervisor Lego, the questions you're bringing up are good ones, and ones that I know all of us do have. What we're looking for from this resolution is to pull Finance Chair Sokol into this lovely discussion as well in these meetings so that we can move it forward in looking at the numbers and the concept overall. You will certainly hear much more about this, but to the concern of the Treasurer, it is something that does need to be addressed. So that's where we're on. If there's no further discussion regarding this, which I know we will again have in Finance, are we ready for the vote? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. To that point, Mr. Schuett, as much as we would love to continue talking about the possibilities of self-insurance, I'd like to just get right to the point. Is this an option that this committee would like investigated, researched, and brought back to you for the nuts and bolts for a longer period of time to discuss in its entirety about the benefits, both the benefits and the disadvantages of self-insured overall?
Can I just chime in real quick?
Of course.
This is something that we're moving towards with our other broker. And, you know, we had a history, and I suggested to Yeager and Flynn, maybe we wait, keep it on the table, but wait a year to let them see the history of the county claims, even though they, you know, have it from their prior thing. Being a conservative person I am, I'd like to see us wait a year before we dive into the total self-insurance. I'm okay if you want to, but, you know, that was where we're going. That's why we build up the reserve in the health insurance. I mean, they've been online for less than a year. They feel comfortable moving ahead, but myself and I think Mike,
Yeah,
we agreed.
You know, if the committee and if the board want to move with it now, I mean, obviously that's your decision. I don't have to play in that. Until I see the final figures and everything and how it's all going to play out, I'm kind of like Kevin on this. Maybe we wait a year, but it depends on how everything looks, how the figures come out, how it all plays out.
Supervisor Bramer.
I certainly respect that position that you want to see things play out a little bit longer, but we do have the past history, and I don't think
Right.
Yeager and Flynn coming on board is, you know, has rocked the ship too much. So I would like to see them present something at the next quarterly meeting. That's another 3 months.
okay, we can do it.
Supervisor Montesi?
And I think one of the things we should do too, if we're going to move ahead with that, even in a study, is include Emmy Clute. She does the self-insured for compensation for the county, and her input would be important too, and on an administrative basis.
Mr. Chairman? Yes, we certainly can do that. Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, really, I don't see any reason why we can't move forward, but respecting what the administrator is saying, the governor on this will be where your reinsure kicks in. So, for example, initially, you might want to be conservative and have a lower reinsure until you have on right track there. In other words, you want your reinsure on your health care maybe to kick in at a lower amount. It costs you more for that, but you're just being more careful against your fund balance. Here you do have a fund balance. And that will give us experience, because what will happen here is that we will get into there will be a model put together of all of our experience, and then what will happen is we will have to determine whether we need a reservation out of our operating condition that goes to our fund balance, healthcare fund balance, because we're going to have to achieve some recommended level on that fund balance based upon experience and based upon our own comfort level. So what I would recommend is that we do move forward and have a number of different kick-in parts on the reinsurer so that we see the financial implications of that, and we can set a reinsurer that we feel is a good reinsurer going forward. And then as time goes on, you can lift that. You can lift that based on your experience and based on your fund balance to whatever level, annually that you wish. Am I stating it reasonably well?
Yes, we'll have a full analysis of those various thresholds and, risk versus reward. I know Kurt wanted to say something quick.
Yes,
I
please
just
go
wanted to
ahead.
point out one thing to kind of go along with what you're saying, Ron. Inside your fully insured contract right now, you have a $250,000 pooling limit right now, okay?
For medical.
Even though you're fully insured, but what happens is if any claims go over that $250,000 mark, they subtract them back out on your renewal calculation, okay? So the county right now is technically, because you're 100% credible, is technically self-insuring the first $250,000 right now. One thing that, to go along with what you're saying, and Matt, looking at the various levels, if we self-insure and pull everything together, we may look at a $150,000 pooling point, or a $200,000 or $125,000. We may look for quicker protection for the county. Now, the lower you go, the more it costs, but you got to, kind of weigh the average there and see what works best. But I think it's important to understand that right now, the first $250,000, no matter what, the county's paying itself. Okay?
Just one moment, Supervisor Montesi. Budget Officer Thomas had his hand up.
Yeah, we've been several years approaching. We started out, we were community rated, then we got experience rated, and we built up a substantial surplus. And that surplus allows us to stay at a 3-4% rate increase rather than 10 or 15% system from that case. So we're at that point. Now, to go to self-insured, I'm in no big rush to do it. I'm not saying that. I think we all need to be educated on what the advantages to it are. And I think, like Mr. Schuett said, I think the advantages are managing risk rather than managing rates. I think that's exactly what it gets to.
The other factor that if you're going to go self-insured, although we have $4.5 million in a surplus right now, it may take another $3 million to make us solvent for being self-insured, and that'll come out of Frank's budget.
Well, I'm not so sure that that's the case.
No, that's not the case.
Looks like I followed the meeting yesterday.
What will happen here is, for example, if you look at page 2 here, if we go to self-insurance, let's say for the sake of discussion that the numbers that they're showing here of $1.9 million. So let's understand that's no small number out of any operating condition. So what we'll do is if we need to go to a higher fund balance, what we will do is that money will drop to whatever reservation on that money we choose to make. So for example, if you want to take it all now as a credit against next year's taxes or whatever, you could do that. I wouldn't recommend that, but what you might want to do is you might want to say take some of that or all of it and drop it to your reserve just to achieve a higher comfort level. If you're not comfortable at $4.5 million, you want it at $6 million, and that'll only be based upon the advice of expert healthcare. You see what I'm saying, Ron?
Yeah.
It doesn't come out. It doesn't come out of general tax.
Well, there's a cost.
Right.
And I think what's important to note here is if this is the direction the committee would like us to move in and continue to research this, and perhaps here again for a longer period of time in July might be a good point to talk about this some more. There is a commitment from the county, and we were very clear yesterday, and if I could just ask you to share with your direct comment to me yesterday, which I think will be reassuring to all of us that have a lot of questions.
Yeah, my direct comment was that if we're going to pull this in and we're going to go to a self-insured plan for medical and prescription, we need to have consistent, solid engagement back from the county. And everyone's got to be under the understanding that if we look over a 10-year period, as Matt had alluded to earlier, and I took little 10 pieces of paper and put, you know, bad, bad, good, good, fair, average into a bucket. If your first year that you go into the self-insurance, it's bad, you got to see through it. You got to see through it through the long term. If you don't think that you can stomach those maybe 2, possibly 3 bad years over 10 on average, then we shouldn't be going in that direction. We should be looking to take the prescription, pull it back into the fully insured medical program, and continue to operate that way. And you can still feel good about that. You do have a minimum premium contract in place, and what that does is it allows you, it's a mechanism for you to benefit in good claim years, because you are just paying claims. So if you have good claims years, you're not paying that maximum liability. But we need consistent engagement. We need to be able to sit down and talk about where the plan's going and be creative and proactive of where we're going to move it over those next 10 years.
And I think, Matt, if you are, if you bring in that chart, draw a chart up, because prior to this, we had a couple bad years. We had a couple real bad years with a couple catastrophic illnesses that could have cost the county a lot of money. So you just need to be aware of that. It can happen at any time. And then what we don't want to do is if we have a bad year, we don't want to blame it on the broker and say, oh, they got us into something that we shouldn't have done that. That's the only reason why I say, let's get the information in front of us.
President Leggett.
Mr. Chairman, are we cutting off the conversation here mid-presentation? Do we get down to thirds?
Well,
have a resolution and say next, or are we continuing?
Well, it depends on how quickly our county administrator will take the microphone from me if we continue.
We can move through it if you have more questions, sure.
Absolutely.
If a gentleman has prepared a whole presentation and it's on the agenda for us to get the full update on these things, I'm all ears. There's a lot to know. It seems like it was prearranged. This is what we're going to do, and it gets pulled out from the committee.
Oh, no, Supervisor Leggett, not at all.
Okay.
The concern here, frankly, and if I can be very frank with our committee, this will mean work for all of us. And just as we've seen, we've implemented some great programs, but the Personnel Committee has worked very hard. And so what we are looking for from you is that this will become a regular dialogue. We don't want to jump in it, say this is what we want to do, and shove it down anybody's throat. That's not what we're doing here. What we want to do here is see, does this pique your interest? Is this something you want looked at? Do you want us to continue to work on it? Because as we move forward, we will all be working on this. So we'd like to hear a lot more from Mr. Schuett, and to your point, Supervisor Leggett, and we'd like to start allowing more time in our meetings to be able to look at this, because potentially it has an ability to save the county some dollars and also to provide our employees with an incredible benefit. Does that answer your question? I don't want you to have a different perception.
No, it doesn't.
Oh, good. It doesn't answer my question.
No.
Okay.
Why is Mr. Schuett standing here? Is he here to give a presentation?
An update on what we've been working on to the Personnel Committee.
Is there more to the update?
Mr. Schuett, please continue.
One thing, just to make sure it's communicated, is we are consultants and advisors, so we are not, and I think this is important, we are not going to lean or push hard on to stay where you are or to go self-insured. We're going to advise and consult and walk you through this and help you make the determination if it's the right decision or not. It's just to make sure everybody's clear on that. I think this weekend, and I would recommend, I'll go through the second page in a little more in some detail. However, it probably does need its own dedicated hour of a committee meeting. It needs some time on its own in a separate meeting, I would recommend, because even though I'm going to go through this in a little bit, we could deep dive in a lot of areas that are important that you're going to need to know about, but it's just probably not the setting for it today. The second page, though, I'm only going to highlight a few areas because Chairman Conover went to the financials right away on the savings. What's important to note: this is a first-year analysis of potential first-year savings Okay, and I want to make sure one thing's very important. On the top, you're going to see projected estimated annual medical premium of $10.2 million. You have your prescription claims of estimated at 2.2, and you have a medical expense reimbursement plan for your second high deductible plan. We're reimbursing employees. That comes to roughly $10,000. So we're in the neighborhood of 12.4 of a total rolled up cost up top. The projected annual claims, as you drop down to the next box, assuming a similar plan design, again, no impact to employees, goes to 9.1. Now, what's important to note about that, those are considered to be immature claims, which means that our first year of claims are expected to be light, okay, because you're not carrying over any claims. You happen to renew in December, you're not carrying over any claims for somebody that went to the hospital on Thanksgiving. Okay, that's covered under the old contract. You know how hospital claims go and doctor claims. They take weeks, sometimes months to process through. So the first 3 months or so of your claim utilization in a self-insured plan is expected to be very light. So that's only a one-time event when you go in the first time. So the first year savings will look larger than a projected second year, as an example. So that's at 9.1. The other things, and this is where we're going to take deeper dives in a subsequent meeting. Annual ASO annual admin cost is roughly $550. That's because you still need an administrator to pay claims, to produce ID cards, to manage claims. Okay, the stop loss annual cost at $841. That includes complete protection, reinsurance on any one individual and reinsurance on the entire group, specific and aggregate. So again, these are areas, the 12-12 contract, we have to take deeper dives on. I'm cruising through it now. So that gives us an estimate of 10.5. So on the surface, it looks like a $1.9 million savings. However, keep in mind we have to, the county has an accumulated fund for this, but you have to then disperse a roughly $1 million check to Blue Shield to cover the claims that are running out when you leave. So think of it in reverse. What I said, somebody goes to the hospital in November, that claim may not come to fruition until January or February. Blue Shield's on the hook for that, so that's where that $1 million gets dispersed. That was agreed to years ago when you set up the contract. Okay, so roughly $900,000 is what we're anticipating year one, if all things hold true for now. Okay. Certainly.
We do have that money, okay? I mean, that was that's part of that reserve, okay? So that money has been accumulated and is sitting there in anticipation of if we ever need Blue Shield, regardless of why we go out.
Correct.
That money is there, so that's not something we have to come up with.
Yep. So, trying to keep everybody happy here.
Supervisor Montesi.
So today what we've done so far is we've said let's move ahead with looking at a reinsurance for prescriptions, and I think we ought to take our consultant's advice and maybe schedule another meeting within the next 2 or 3 weeks just to talk about this and then come up with some kind of a resolution.
At the committee's pleasure. Supervisor Frazier?
Well, I don't know if we necessarily need it in the next 2 or 3 weeks, but I do think the next time we meet, it should be strictly for dealing with this issue. I don't think we need to have like 10 other things that we have to get through. So if we schedule, let's say, a meeting and that's all we're going to deal with is the health insurance, that to me makes sense. I don't know if it's necessary in the next 2 or 3 weeks, if they're ready for that, or if they're saying, wait for a couple months and then we'll get together. But I mean, I feel like, Ron, we do need to get together and just dedicate that time to discussing this and not anything else.
Supervisor Sokol.
Thank you, Chairwoman. Maybe you should form an advisory committee and chair it. But, no, Maddie,
I hear you volunteering.
Quick question, Maddie. I don't know if this adds to the equation or for a future discussion, but does it help us to think about are there other counties that are doing this? Does it, I mean, is there a history of counties that have done this in their experience, and does it actually weigh in on our decision or not?
It's a good question. There's There are other municipalities that do this, certainly as you head downstate a little bit more, not so much up this way, but we have plenty of, it's a little bit much more popular on the private side, so we can, there's a number of clients that we have that have walked through this and have had it for a number of years. And an important point on this too is, kind of back to your original question earlier, is that we have yet to see anybody go back. Okay, so this recommendation is we're walking through this. It's going to make sure everybody's on the same page and agrees to it. It's not set up to the degree that, hopefully it would almost invariably always cost you more if you were to go back. So we haven't seen anybody who's, or any clients that have jumped into this that have ever wanted to go back or move out.
JFA
It's a good point. Correct, our clients, yes.
What's the pleasure of the committee in terms of, it sounds as if we'd like another meeting and have this be our only agenda. We'll call a special personnel meeting. Mr. Shuitt, what time frame would be comfortable for you, as you are the one preparing this information?
As far as we may, it depends if you want to wait for the reinsurance rates to come in. If you want that to be part of the discussion, I mean, we can deep dive on many of these topics now. Or if you prefer to wait, end of month, something like that. If you prefer to wait for that time frame, and so we can put it in context, that maybe work better.
Rates. I'd also recommend that it be a finance as much of trying to get smart as much as possible. But I think a separate meeting just on the subject, I think that you suggested is exactly what's needed to be focused on this.
Okay. So
The only other thing I wanted to mention, just for the reason you have a fund balance is because what builds the fund balance is that your revenue has exceeded your expenses within that account, right? So then over time that increases your fund balance. That's not why there is a $4.5 million. So we've already managed our health care plan to achieve a $4.5 million fund balance. The question really is now, how do we want to manage this going forward? So there's quite a track record there already. I just would put that out there. That fund balance didn't automatically appear. The other thing to keep in mind is, although the rates change depending upon when you were hired, conservatively 75% of cost and of the benefit, if there is a benefit, falls to the general fund. Falls to the general fund because while the employees contribute what they contribute based on their percentage, the balance, which is the hefty balance, say the 75%, comes from the taxpayers. That's where that money comes from. So if there's $12.5 million of expense, 75% of that comes from this guy and this guy, the taxpayer. So keep that in mind as well. There's no free lunch here.
So I think what might be appropriate this time then is looking into our June meeting dates and setting a separate meeting date and committee meeting, at least for a couple hours, both to discuss the progress we've made regarding the prescription, the resolution that we passed forward today to move forward on that, also the self-insurance as a whole, and what I was going to talk to you next about is we're moving into our employee portal that talks specifically about our health benefits. There will be a demonstration at the June meeting. Perhaps it makes more sense to also include that in our discussions when we have our separate meeting about health benefits. We do have an opportunity now to start rolling out some additional benefits for our employees. We're, at the advice of our treasurer, starting with one additional benefit, and hope to have talked about that in June. So maybe we could put it all together in a special Matt Shuitt meeting for all of us to talk about in June, if that is acceptable to the committee. Sound good? If there's no further discussion, let's move on to our next item. Thank you very much. We certainly appreciate all of your expertise and look forward to meeting with you at length in June. Thank you. Calling your attention to item number 2B, the review of report and tracking of vacancies filled. It is attached to your agenda. Jackie, is there anything that you'd like to say about that? No? Supervisor Bramer?
Thank you. At this time, I'd just like to raise my concern that we still do not have a county administrator at all in the work. I think Supervisor Garrity has been doing a fantastic job. I just think that's something that we cannot, last year at this time, I was one of the people saying the sky's not going to fall if we wait a little bit, but now we've waited a year, and
The sky didn't fall.
the sky didn't fall. But, Supervisor Garrity just said on Monday, there's a lot of things he has on his plate, and maybe some county things that need more attention, that could be better served by having a full-time administrator back on our salary.
I absolutely 100% agree with you.
So,
Having said that,
Supervisor Brock?
so how do we go about this? What do we,
Well,
You should start a search.
well, that's not, I obviously, not gonna just show up, but I mean, are we gonna do it the old way, or are we gonna do it?
perhaps you could clarify what the old way is or what you'd like the new way to be.
The way we
Let's
did
not
it.
do it the way we did last
The way
time.
we did it last time, is what I'm getting
No,
at.
I'm just teasing.
I'm sorry, I can't follow everyone at the same time, but Supervisor Brock, was there additional comments you
Oh,
want
I'm
to make
just-
regarding it?
I'm wondering, I mean, the last one we did didn't end up anywhere, so what do we do?
What,
How
do we
we-
need to post?
Supervisor Bramer?
I'm sorry.
No problem. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think we need to follow the same procedural steps we did last time. And that we should
Mhm.
ask HR to start moving on that.
Is there a,
Any less?
does the committee all agree? May I just also caution the timing of this? Please be aware that as you move, I don't know if you're making this in the form of a resolution or not to move forward, but the last time we went out for a search for a county administrator, it not only did the search take several months, but if you all recall, the interviewing process took an incredible amount of time as well. And unfortunately, and fortunately, we've had an opportunity now to have our county administrator get his hands on what's going on in the county and working with our strong department heads who are all doing an excellent job. So as you look at that, I want to just remind you of all of your time commitments in September as we do year-end performance evaluations, and that will take additional time the month of September. So we need to be aware of the search deadline and interview dates and the calendar moving forward. Supervisor Dickinson.
Why don't we just give Kevin a raise?
No, Kevin doesn't want a raise. Kevin wants you to find an administrator. And we're going to talk about it this afternoon. I'm going to talk with them about it this afternoon.
County Administrator Kevin Garrity has his performance evaluation this afternoon, which is what he is referring to.
That's what he's worried about.
So that being said, how would the committee like to move forward? Or do you want just note it, or would you like action?
No, I'm on the committee. I'll make a motion that you put it out for a county administrator.
Okay, so a motion has been made by County Administrator Kevin Garrity and seconded by Supervisor Bramer. Is there discussion at this point? Supervisor Bramer.
Yes, I would I do support that motion, and maybe Jackie could come up with just some time about when we post it, how soon that can get out. Just, maybe we don't put a deadline for. Because I felt like that harmed us last time when we put like an end date to the applications being accepted. Let's just keep accepting them until we find some good candidates and start interviewing them.
So
Maybe
you have a
someone will
fluid
come in at
timeline.
the last second, and that's okay. They might not see it. They might not see the posting, and we shouldn't cut them off just because they didn't submit their application by a random date.
Okay.
But we should cut off the, end of our interview process. And maybe she can make sure that's done by before September evaluation time rolls around.
Supervisor Dickinson.
I'd like to thank Kevin for coming in as administrator. He's done a stellar job, and I think we'd be lucky to find somebody that is as qualified as Kevin is and has done a good job.
We'll find somebody, Dennis. I'm confident we'll find somebody to take this position. But you need to do it sooner rather than later, because we certainly need somebody here to go through the budget, because that's going to be a big part of it. And then, as I stated to whoever was listening Monday, this shared services stuff that's supposed to be done in 1 or 2 months is something that's going to be taxing. I got Joanne working on it, but there's a lot to that. I don't agree with it, but there's a lot of milestones we have to cover, and I just don't want to be responsible for it anymore. I've had enough of it, and I'm all for it, and I was going to discuss it this afternoon with my performance review people and explain to them what I think we should do.
Supervisor Brock.
Are we going to go nationwide, or what's our scope? I'm more concerned with what lessons we learned from the last time we did this.
Mm-hmm.
That we I mean, it doesn't look good to keep doing this and that.
But we could put together something with Jackie and find a suitable candidate, I'm sure.
If I may just make a suggestion for the pleasure of the committee, we are completing that performance evaluation mid-year process later this afternoon. We will obviously have more information and recommendations from our county administrator. Perhaps we could do, as there is a motion on the floor, to begin the process of hiring a county administrator. And that will obviously come to the full board for our main meeting. Perhaps then we could report back in June with both the timeline Supervisor Bramer is requesting, along with working with our county administrator on a job description and scope, and some proposals for you to consider how fast you decide you'd like to move on it as a committee.
Call the vote.
Okay? Is it, as long as that's acceptable? Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That vote carries. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman Garrity, as well. I keep doing that, Chairman Conover, and I apologize, but County Administrator Garrity, for all of your hard work. We look forward to working with you to
You're not going to
fill
break
your
my
shoes.
heart. Trust me. There's too many things going on within the state and the budget and stuff, and I recognize it. Now, I'll talk to my people this afternoon. Peter and I think Edna.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes,
There is an attorney sitting in this meeting, and I'm just wondering, are you here for personnel meeting?
I'm here for an executive session dealing with negotiations.
For personnel?
I'm not sure which committee.
Personnel, yes.
Personnel.
Yes, Supervisor.
At the time of pending, we'll go into, have a motion made for executive session at that point. Supervisor Montesi. Moving on to 2C. Request to amend Resolution Number 167 of 2017, amending the table of organization of Warren County Salary and Compensation Plan to correct a clerical error and update the salary with Early Intervention Service Coordinator position. At this point in time, I would like to draw your attention to an error in item C. The correct numbers, which are reflected in your backup and on the proposed resolution, is $40,837 to $44,101 in accordance with the recently adopted CSCA contract. So again, the numbers in front of you on your overall page are not correct, but on your backup it is correct. That being said, 2C, Supervisor Frazier with the motion and Supervisor McDevitt with the second. Is there any discussion? None being heard. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. 2D is a proposed change to Warren County plans and policies to revise out-of-unit employee policies to match the CSEA negotiated policy changes and benefit contribution levels. That outline is attached for you. Could I have a motion to put that on the floor, please? Motion made by Supervisor McDevitt, seconded by Supervisor Simpson. Any discussion? Supervisor Leggett.
So this is part of contract, this is just updating language, is that correct?
It's already adopted.
It's not part of the, if I may?
No, please, go
It's
ahead.
not part of the contract. This is to change the policies for the non-contract employees to mirror those for the contract employees.
Oh, okay.
Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all of those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. 2E is a review of proposed changes to Resolution Request Form Number 12, which is a notice of intent to fill vacant positions. At this point in time, I think it would be relevant for our HR Director, Jackie, to perhaps give you a update on why there's a need to change this form. You wouldn't mind, Jackie?
Sure.
We started out, Trish and I had a meeting with a few supervisors who had questions and concerns about the level of detail and tracking. When we check on the current form, there's a box that's checked staff fill due to promotion, and those positions are not tracked on the tracking chart that I do. So we don't know if sometimes this is, the position on the form +1 or the position on the form +7 changes, because it could be, depending on the size of the department, a whole line of people that get promoted. So I was asked to have that no longer be an option, so we can see every position that's being filled. The other changes, we had employee number on there, but we were asked to add last name just so it's more clear for people. Because in the world, you can look somebody up by their employee number, it doesn't really help you. Date of vacancy, I wanted to add because sometimes people do these well in advance. If they have 2 months notice that someone's retiring, I want to make sure that we're not filling that position before it becomes vacant. And then adding, Tricia's always had to sign off as personnel officer, but she didn't have actually a line to sign on, so we just gave her a line to sign. So those were the only changes that were proposed. And it's more for administrative ease, I guess.
Supervisor Bramer?
Jackie, and so now they don't have the backfill thing, right? So they are gonna do, if there are the one change and then it cascades down to others, they'll do a form for each of those others.
Right, and I think the thought process is, in the sheriff's office, he kind of knows what type of position is going to get promoted up. So he did patrol sergeant number TBD, patrol officer number TBD. I think in some departments where it's not a straight line of promotion, they're going to be asked to give at least an example of the level of the position. So if you have in PSS, social welfare examiner comes open and there's several types of people who might move into that, they would just list those types and then we would go in and fill in the detail once we selected. We're not trying to slow down the process, but we want to.
They'll just fill it in later though.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, with the exact position, exactly.
Are there any other questions?
I'll make a motion, we approve the forms.
If you would so entertain making a motion to approve this form as well as amend the Warren County policies and procedures as necessary,
I
because...
will do that.
Do I hear a second to his motion? Supervisor Frazier. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. Moving on to number 3, a referral from county facilities. A request to amend the table of organization and salary schedule to create the position of cleaner 2, grade 2.
I'll move it.
Moved by Supervisor Garrity, seconded by Supervisor Montesi. All those, discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. Number 4, referral from the Criminal Justice and Public Safety to request to amend the table of organization and salary schedule to create the position of Patrol Officer number 63 with an annual salary of $42,409.50 effective May 22nd.
I'll move it.
Moved by Supervisor Montesi, seconded by Supervisor Frazier. Discussion. Supervisor Bramer. Sorry, she beat you.
I beat you. I understand they have this patrol officer who's moving into a different role and they need another person, but I thought I heard some other talk about needing more patrol officers coming up, so I'm kind of concerned that we're filling one in now and just worried about our finances, but I assume it's going over to finance too.
You are correct. Supervisor Leggett?
So this is a new position. The question is in general about all newly created positions. That there's going to be additional costs throughout, and legacy costs and things like that. How has the county acted in the past on creating these new positions, and what's the policy been? Is there any operating policy that we go by, being new to the board here?
Yeah, you forward it on to finance, we have a discussion with the budget officer, forward it on to finance, and then the board votes. It's 2/3 votes of the board, I think, to approve any new positions.
I think in the presentation that the sheriff gave for this new position, he also pointed out over the last 3 or 4 years how many patrol officers were down. I think it's 4 or 5. So we are down in a number of for the last 4 or 5 years. And this is a new position that requires, actually, if there's a serious question, requires the sheriff talking to you about what this fellow is going to be doing. And
I was present for that, and this is just a general question about creating new positions and personnel, and then by just voting on these without much consideration, just saying, oh, it's requested, and we say okay, and then it goes off to finance, and they go, well, personnel said it was okay.
I can tell you this position has been vetted beforehand with the chairman of the committee and the budget officer with the sheriff, and we had a discussion about this beforehand. We know creating any new positions raises flags, so we had, we've already had a discussion. That's why it was explained in committee. Committee brings the personnel. If personnel approves it, then it will go on to finance with a source of revenue for it.
Okay. And my general
on any
question
position
was in general, so
that's on any
we
position.
Not for any
Craig,
of the new ones that are here.
Right. Any time somebody wants to change, we usually try to get it vetted completely before we bring it in there.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. 5 is a referral from Health, Human, and Social Services. It's a request to amend the table of organization and salary schedule to create 5 new positions of Animal Control Officer, number 1 through 5, per diem, to be paid per animal bite at the rate of $40 per hour. This rate will include mileage. Supervisor Bramer has made a motion to get it on the floor, seconded by Supervisor Montesi. Discussion.
Well, I think Ms. Howard explained it quite well when she was at the meeting the other day, all the issues that we've had, and they came up with a solution. It is a part-time, and as you can see, at this point, she's looking at, several, and I just think it's something that we should approve. We've had all the issues, and we found a way to solve it, so.
Same deal.
And it is the responsibility of our health department to handle rabies with dogs.
Right.
And,
Supervisor Leggett?
And on this, on top, handwritten in is 5 positions requested, but down on D, it says new positions may hire up to 10 individuals. That's what we're doing. Given latitude to be able to have 10 of these.
Perhaps at this point it would be helpful to have Ms. Auer just explain briefly the difference between the 1 to 5 per diem and your resolution request form for up to 10.
Basically, what the plan is that we have already reached out to...
May I ask you just to stand at the microphone so everyone could hear you? Thank you.
We actually are not sure exactly how many we're going to use. The plan is that we are going to reach out to animal control officers that have experience, and we did reach out to some that are in the towns now doing it, and we've had actually wonderful response. Nobody has said they were not interested in helping out, so the plan would be that we want to be able to, like if somebody from Chestertown takes care of a bite in Warrensburg, and we're only talking about bites, we'd be able to compensate them, and we don't want to burn anybody out so that everybody gets, a couple. So that would be why I can't tell you the exact number that we would be wanting, but if we use somebody, we have to be able to have a mechanism to pay them.
They only get paid when they
If
work.
we create one
Supervisor
position,
Bramer?
they can, I'm sorry.
No, that's
If
fine.
we create one position, it can be filled by any of these 10, up to 10 people, or do we create 10 positions?
Ms. Auer.
I don't know, they're per diem, they're sporadic, but again, because it goes through a per diem, like a per diem nurse, there's got to be a place to put them in the salary schedule.
See, it's we budget by position, so you actually got to have a notch line in the budget, correct,
Yeah,
Mike?
we have to have 10 positions. In other words,
But they only get paid
Right.
when they were, but you,
I get that. So should I amend my motion to be 10, not 5?
Amanda, is, Ms. Hour, is that what you're asking for?
up to 10?
That's what.
The
I mean, like,
resolution
I
was
can't
five.
tell you exactly now if you want to say 5 right now, but I'm not saying that as the summer goes on, we won't need to come back and say, we need to add a couple more.
We'll make it 10. I mean, it's not gonna, you're not spending money, you're just gonna put a line in the...
We're not going to use them if we don't need to.
Right, yes.
So would you like to amend your motion then, Supervisor Bramer? So you'll be amending that to up to 10. And I'm sorry, I can't recall who seconded. Supervisor Montesi, was that you? Is that agreeable?
Yes.
Is there any further discussion given the amendment? Jackie?
The agenda says per animal bite at a rate of $40 per hour. Is it per bite or per hour?
Per bite.
Okay,
That includes mileage.
okay.
There's not any additional funding for that, which is
If
why
they
we'd
spend
like to...
2 hours, they both get $40.
That's correct.
Okay, so we need to now make a, if it pleases Supervisor Bramer to remove the per hour from your initial resolution, so it will be for up to 10 per diem to be paid per animal bite at a rate of $40.
Yes.
Is that acceptable, Supervisor Montesi?
Yes.
That being said, is there any further discussion or clarification needed on this vote? Supervisor Stroud?
Patricia, does that include the initial appearance and the 10-day follow-up, or is that going to be like 1 hour for
The 10-day follow-up, because we've actually, the way we've fixed the plan, we're going to, within our department, we're going to do all of the owner-victim bites, which is going to substantially cut down on the number of them. So the only ones that we would be looking to have the follow-up on would be people that might be a neighbor or something that we wouldn't be able to do business with one person. Or if there's any particular issue, we would use the animal control officers for that.
any qualifications?
Yeah, we're only going to be using animal control officer experiences, like the ones that are involved with the towns now that have had animal control officer experience. Yeah, no, because there was a lot of discussion about the fact that you didn't want to just send anybody to check the bites.
You have to recognize.
Right.
And as a point of interest, Washington County does do a very similar process for $30. So we are right in line with some
Well,
of our
they pay
numerous-
mileage on top of the $30.
Correct, yes. So we're right on target. Any further discussion? No? Hearing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Bringing us to item number 6, a referral from self-insurance. A request to amend the table of organization and salary schedule to create the position of self-insurance specialist, a grade 12, with an annual salary of $37,835, and to delete the position of account clerk effective January 1st, 2018.
I'll move that.
Moved by Supervisor Garrity, seconded by Supervisor Frazier. Discussion.
This
Hearing
is Amy
Supervisor
Klutz,
Montesi.
Amy Klutz's idea of planning for the future.
Correct. Yes. Okay, hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. That brings us to our pending items. At this point, there were no pending items on personnel or higher education. Of course, you also see here your vacancies have approved for filing by your oversight committee. That is an overview there for you. But at this point in time, I am advised that there is a need for an executive session. County Attorney Rickenbach, could you please describe that need?
Yes, there is, we'd like to have an update from Mr. Paltrowitz on the current collective negotiations pursuant to Article 14 of the Civil Service Law. We need 6 votes for the executive session.
I'll make that motion.
That motion is made by Supervisor Garrity, seconded by Supervisor Montesi. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We are now in executive session.
See you later.
A motion was...
insurance costs.
Yeah, or just...
Oh, but motion to come out of that, right? We did that? Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, no action taking in executive session at this point unless you have any further discussions for personnel. Could I have a motion to adjourn? Made by Supervisor Simpson, second by Super Frazier. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Fantastic. We are adjourned.
Rachel, I'm sorry, Larry reminded me to